There we are. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. And yes, we are finally starting our series in regards to Social Security and Supplemental Security income. We are going to start the first video with first letting you guys have a better idea in regards to what these two separate things actually are before we start going more into exactly how the cuts that are currently being proposed by the GOP nightmare landscape we all happen to live in is going to affect those benefits on each side. That way, when I make reference to either one, you'll understand that these things, although similar and governed underneath the same department, are not the same thing. If you are new to the channel, disclaimer, anything we go over regarding to this series, you're always going to find the links right there in the description box, including this one here, which I will be leaving the link to what we're going to be going through today in the description box for you. Trigger warnings for this channel. We do have it marked not for kids for a reason, folks. We do use profanity. We go over some pretty dark subjects. If your child's 16 and younger and watching this, parental supervision is advised. Also, for those who are politics fans or you're deeply involved in it, this channel is not a friendly channel to MAGA, to old school neocon GOP, to Democrats, or the far left Democrats. Mainly because what I have seen throughout the entirety of my life is all sides using those of us with disabilities as their own personal pawns that they put in front of the cameras, smile and shake our hands, and then by the time they get in the office, they give us lip service and small little favors, and that's pretty much it, really. Yeah, I am not kind to any of these folks, nor do I believe that any of them, literally any of them, are absolutely in it for us. So, just be prepared for that in advance, alright? Good. Okay. Also, it's amateur hour over here, folks. I do not know how to do all the bells and whistles that you might see on other content creators' channels. I apologize for that. I mean, I'm a whiz at PowerPoint and using sound effects and all the things I've learned from back in the day. But when it comes to this particular type of media, I'm extremely new and extremely inexperienced. However, the subjects that I talk about and the information I go over are things I know very, very well. So just keep that in mind while you watch some of these videos, okay? Alright, so first, Supplemental Security Income, SSI overview. So what is SSI? Supplemental Security Income is by far, at least what most of us who have developmental disabilities, who receive a small income from Social Security, that's where the most of us draw it from. In fact, back in the day, like several years ago, I have been off Social Security a long, long time. Boy, that was a hell of a fight too, but that's its own subject. And when you talk about folks with developmental disabilities that have that supplemental income, most of them have part-time jobs that are based out there in community. That's the main ones that are used for folks like myself. Let me go ahead and continue. So SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. Social Security administers this program. So they're both under the same department but are not the same thing. We pay monthly benefits to people with limited income and resources who are blind, age 65 or older, or have a qualifying disability. Children with disabilities or who are blind may also get SSI. So those of us who are autistic, those of us who are folks with Down syndrome, you might see some folks with cerebral palsy, and people with the developmental disabilities, that's literally usually what we draw that small income from. Thankfully, I no longer have to do that these days, but when I tell you that the folks who were working with me at the beginning of me entering into the service system and tried just about every trick they could to try to get it out of my head that I wanted full-time work and insurance that didn't suck. That was a 6 years long major battle. Yeah, I think I'm stressed now. That's its own topic. Let me go back to this next part here. How is SSI different from Social Security benefits? Many people who are eligible for SSI may also be entitled to Social Security benefits. In fact, the application for SSI is also an application for Social Security benefits. However, SSI and Social Security are different in many ways. So, our first bullet point: Social Security benefits may be paid to you and certain members of your family if you are insured, meaning you worked long enough and paid Social Security taxes. So that stuff they take out of our paychecks every year, well, oh my God, sorry. The stuff that they take out of each of our paychecks would be bi-monthly, some folks monthly. That stuff, that's your Social Security. It's kind of like a bizarre insurance program that once you get a certain age, you get access to start being able to use that money that they've been taking out of your checks and putting aside for you from pretty much as soon as you begin to work. I mean, I remember having Social Security pulled out for me when I was about 16 years old and working at Taco Bell. So, that's what that is. Unlike Social Security benefits, SSI benefits are not based on prior work or a family member's prior work. SSI, second bullet point, is financed by general funds of the U.S. Treasury, personal income taxes, corporate taxes, and other taxes. Social Security taxes collected under the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, or FICA, or the Self-Employment Contributions Act, SECA, do not fund the SSI program. So you see how that's different, right? When you have supplementary security income, what you're receiving is not coming out of the Social Security funds that they take from each of our paychecks. It's its own separate entity and it's funded a different way. But since we are talking GOP here, any cuts that come to this department are going to hit both programs. We'll get more into that as we continue down the road with this series. So, next bullet point. In most states, SSI recipients can also get medical assistance, Medicaid, to pay for hospital stays, doctor bills, prescription drugs, and other health costs. Medicaid and supplemental security income are pretty much like this. And what I've noticed in regards to those of us with developmental disabilities in particular is if you manage to get onto one, you're pretty much going to get on to the other. However, what was known back when I originally got on supplemental security income, and it seems to also still be a thing today, Usually they will outright deny your first application to get supplemental security income. It happened to me. And I put in an appeal through my lawyer, and when I got that approved, I then also got the back pay, which, yeah, that can be its own hazard. We'll get into that eventually. That's its own subject. But yes, with supplemental security income and Medicaid, if you get one, more than likely that is going to help you get the other. I actually got approved for Medicaid first, and then later on, after having my first application for SSI denied, a year later, I was able to start receiving that in. Many states also provide a supplemental payment to certain SSI recipients. Not true in my case. I was living poor for an exceptional period of time, and if I didn't have, with additional help of food stamps and Medicaid on top of it, yeah, you want to talk about a house of cards that would have come tumbling down. Yeah, just saying. SSI recipients, just like I said, may also be eligible for food assistance. In some states, an application for SSI also serves as an application for food assistance. So out here, everything's kind of all within and under the same roof. For example, if you're going in to apply for food stamps, and you're an individual who, like myself, have received things such as Medicaid or supplemental security income in the past, or even if you're applying for the first time, you can actually apply for all three of those in the exact same place. And once you take your number and you go back and talk to your caseworker, then why they help you to finish putting in the information from your application into the computers, will ask you whether you want to go ahead and apply for the supplemental security income and Medicaid, or if you have those two, or if you have just one. You see where I'm going with, right? Okay, good. SSI is paid on the first of the month, and there is no bilateral pay, folks. You get one check at the first of each month. If you live in a regular apartment, like for example, this apartment here that I have is $865 a month. When I was on supplemental security income, I received from that only about $650 at the first of every month. My assisted living apartment that I was in at the time was under Section 8, so that meant that HUD covered half a portion of my rent, and then the second half came out of me. Now, I can tell you, trying to do that without being in Section 8 type of housing is utterly, completely impossible. Believe me, I would know. I've tried that. I had to do that for like the first month of moving out of my assisted living apartment because I was still working on advocating for myself with the state to turn that into full-time work, and yeah, trying to navigate all of that is not fun. Sorry, we're going in left field. I apologize. Let me get back on track here. To get SSI, you must at least be 65 years old, blind, or have a disability. Hi, I'm autistic. And limited income and resources. Now, there's a problem that I'm going to mention right out the gate. There's a major issue that a lot of people don't like to talk about when it comes to these specific types of benefits here. And essentially, once you're in the service system, what they will do is they will tell you if you are trying to pursue, like I was, full time work, they will hammer down on you like it's the hammer of God that if you make over a certain amount, in my case, we're talking early 2000s, 2005, 2006 era, right? So if I got over $965 within my bank account, then they consider that as something that I'm getting overpaid for something. And they would yank that money out of my account. They put me in the red at least 2 to 3 times within the 6 years that I was a part of that program. I want to talk about nerve-wracking, and it's not just that too. When you are someone like myself and you are pushing to go full-time, there's a whole lot of scare tactics that unless you've been through it, most people don't realize are happening. They really hammer down, like I said, like the hammer of God himself, that if you try to go full-time and better your situation, that you will lose all of your benefits. Now, for an individual like me, I just frustrated them because I would literally eyeball them and say, yes, exactly, that's the point. I would like to have a type of insurance where I don't have to, like, take a 3-hour bus to St. Louis in order to be able to see a dentist that takes Medicaid. Also, I'm a workaholic. Workaholic, folks. You don't know. My family's had interventions with me. I'm not kidding. Twice. But yeah, they hammer really, really hard on that. Which, again, we'll eventually go over to problems within the system. But my answer to the whole situation is not to agree with the GOP and throw the baby out with the bathwater. They have a very bad habit of taking a chainsaw to a situation that requires a scalpel. That is particularly true when it comes to programs like these. Hence why we are having all these series on Medicaid, on supplemental security income, and all that. Alright, let me continue. In addition to get SSI, you must also be either a U.S. citizen or national, or a non-citizen in one of the certain alien classifications granted by the Department of Homeland Security, also known as DHS. Reside in one of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, or the North Mariana Islands, and not be absent from the U.S. for a full calendar month or 30 or more consecutive days. Alright, so now, how is SSI like Social Security benefits? Okay, here's where they're similar. Excuse me. Both programs pay monthly benefits. So, each of them you're going to get at the first of every month. Medical standards for disability are generally the same in both programs for individuals 18 or older. For children from birth to the attainment age of 18, there is a separate definition of disability under SSI. The medical standard is based on the severity of your disability. Financial need is not considered at this step in the eligibility process. SSA administers both programs. So when they say they're going to cut Social Security, they're going to cut both from supplemental security income as well as the regular, more traditional Social Security. We have no get out of jail free cards here. Okay? Alright, so we've kind of got a good way to start here what all the differences are between supplemental security income and regular Social Security benefits. The primary being one of them receives funding from ourselves, essentially. As soon as we are able to work, even your very first fast food job like me, they start taking the Social Security out of your checks and putting it aside for you. Supplemental security income means it's different funding. So it's not the kind of funding that comes out of paychecks. It is taken from different funding sources, different kinds of overall taxes. Those are the main differences. Again, they are both ran by the same overall department. And if you see how closely all of these benefits are related to one another and how close they interact, then usually what happens if one gets hit, they all get hit. And what we're looking at now is, everything. Food stamps, Social Security, supplemental security income, Medicaid. I'm looking in a little bit more into Medicare. That will probably be its own topic. But yeah, this is a good start point, I think, for the first video in regards to this. We will go ahead and be coming back next Thursday of next week to start going over how those cuts will affect supplemental security income, how that will affect Social Security benefits, and getting a little bit more in depth there. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and close on out. So we don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, if you could, please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, don't forget the comments. Now folks, on this channel, if you are new, I have a tendency to go to left in a left field and then take a left turn. I do eventually get back to the subject, but in my defense, I am autistic, and things most regular neurotypical folks won't link together. I will. Just know I do eventually get back to the point, but I just want to apologize for that in advance, alright? Alright, I do appreciate your time, and as always folks, we here at Smelling Tea hope you have a good one. I will see you all next Thursday. Bye-bye everyone.